Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Personal Collection. We have a special one. It is episode number 20. Really happy to get there. And today we have Steven. If you guys don't know Steven, he helped start Breakout, September 2020 we originally had this going?
Yeah, I think it's been a little over a year now, which is pretty crazy that we're not here at this spot. But yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know the backstory how Breakout started, me and Steven knew each other back at UCF. You're still a student there, but I graduated with electrical engineering degree, and we were both in the runners club. Me and Steven, we run different. Steven's super fast, runs short races like 5Ks, 10Ks, also has a sub-3 marathon, which is crazy good. And then I focused on ultra marathons instead, so I ran a 100K, a few 50Ks, and then a 50 miler in the Everglades. So two different styles of running, but both friends over at UCF, and you didn't know about card shows, so I brought you to a card show at Apopka, and then for some reason we decided to start vlogging and recording them. I didn't want to be on camera at first. You were on the beginning vlogs, and then somehow I started doing all this stuff, and you've worked quite a bit on the Breakout side of things. If you guys don't know Steven, right there, and once Breakout scales more and we're at card shows, he's actually going to be a dealer at the table as well.
Yep, that's correct. And it's crazy how we really started off just kind of randomly. One time it was actually you calling me up and saying, hey, do you want to start a business in this? And at first I was just so taken back. I'm not sure if you were serious or I didn't know where this was going to go. And you were like, we can go and make YouTube videos, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, sure, it would be fun. It'd be fun way to pass the time. And it was kind of Ryan who introduced me to the card show scene, because when I was younger, I did collect a couple cards here and there, but it was always at basketball camps. I had to win a certain competition to get cards. In Miami, believe it or not, there really aren't too many LCSs, and the ones that were around me were a little bit overpriced to the point where I was kind of out of the hobby at that point, and I didn't really know of too many shows either. So that's really how I got into cards, and then I stopped for a while until literally right before around the pandemic era is when Ryan kind of reintroduced it to me after we both ran the Miami Marathon together. We were talking about it a little bit. I remember at dinner he was looking at his phone. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm like searching for cards right now. I'm like, oh shoot, that's like pretty cool. And then that's where we had the idea to then go to a card show, and then now here we are with already like gotta be 100 or more card shows under our belt at this point.
Yeah. Right now we've had, I don't even know how many videos on the channel, but last year the 52 shows, I wouldn't say 100 yet, but we're going to get there easily by the end of this year. It's 52 this year, and I think probably 10 or so in 2020. It wasn't crazy every weekend. I think the 52 shows just, happened over time. I remember one time I was on an interview just talking about how many shows he did during the year. It was with Neo Cards and Comics, and I think we're talking like 30s already. I was only like halfway through the year and realized, oh great, I'm going to do 52 shows this year. But Steven's been there for a lot of them, not all 52, but helps out a ton behind the scenes. And you guys wonder how all the content gets posted, how stuff on Instagram, Steven helps with a ton of that stuff. Posts a lot of his cards on there. I don't post as much as my stuff. So when you guys see some of these really cool cards, that's actually Steven's PC. And that's what I wanted to show you guys today for episode number 20, to see a little bit behind the scenes. I'm going to do some episodes later on just showing off my cards and all the different PCs I have, because I have 10 different types of collections which I'm going after right now. But Steven has like a very, very small PC, but they're all absolutely insane cards. He doesn't skip out on the quality of his, I'm fine with ones, but you get some of the best cards in the hobby, man.
Oh, thank you. It's really just me and doing something which I kind of initially coined it. It's called like reverse collecting, where instead of taking your money and buying these little cards that you're going to see again, to really look out and do some research and find those rare cards where you just don't find very often, and you kind of know this is my opportunity to buy it, and you go ahead and get that card and get the hard ones first, and then once you build some wealth and get some more money and are able to do more things, then you can go after the more common cards because they're always going to be around. So that's kind of the way that I looked at things, which is very interesting, because I feel like most people just start out as just huge collectors. We always joke about it. We have like almost opposite ways about how we collect PCs, which is pretty hilarious, because Ryan has like everything, and then I came in a little bit late too, so I selectively pick what goes in there. So yeah, it was just pretty funny that that ended up being how it is.
So yeah, let's take a look at some of the cards today.
Awesome. All right, so I got my little box right here, and everything fits in here, believe it or not. Let's go ahead. So first card, one of my more recent pickups. This is the 1929 Churchman Ruth. And interestingly enough, this card is actually from the UK, which is pretty interesting. And it's not a card it's not an ultra rarity, but it's not common either. It is fairly rare, and it is a really cool card because it is probably the cheapest pre-1930 normal size Ruth card you can find, because I know once you get into the 1920s, especially the early 20s as well, the prices go up super high, the cards get extremely rare. You're talking around like 30 to 50 at PSA. So I was really glad to grab that one, and it's a good addition to my collection. It's a PSA 6, which is a high grade, and I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, I'd say the only ones that are cheaper in the 20s are the strip cards, but even those have skyrocketed. Now with your card over there, it doesn't say Babe Ruth on it, does it?
No, it actually does not mention Babe Ruth at all. So, and that brings me back to what this set was. So in the Churchman set, and there's also, believe it or not, 2 other variation of backs. And actually, thanks to Ian who commented on the post and like told us about that because we didn't even know. But basically, this set, they just had different sports in them. Like I think they even have a football USA one. They have a bunch of different sports. I think there might be a cricket one in there as well, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just a bunch of different sports. There's no really players, but it just so happens for the baseball one that Babe Ruth happens to be, pictured hitting on. And there's really no mention of his name at all on the front or on the back. This is an interesting one. We have a 1948 Kellogg's George Mikan card. And this card, one thing that's really cool about it is that it is one of his rookie cards from 1948. His most expensive being the 1948 Bowman, but this one in particular, the pop is only around 90, and it is, I believe, one of his 2 cards that were actually made in 1948. There was an exhibit that was also made on 1948, 1949, so it was technically a 2-year span. But in terms of 48, this is the only other one you can get other than the Bowman. And believe it or not, it's like around 5 to 10% the amount of the Bowman Mikan, which is pretty crazy, right? Because you wouldn't think.
Definitely.
I know for alternate kind of rookie cards, which is something I enjoy and I kind of collect, they shouldn't be worth as much as the main counterparts in the mainstream cards, depending on where the pop is. But this one is even lower, and it's worth just an absolute fraction of what the Bowman is, which is pretty crazy. And when I saw one of these available for a fairly good price, I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and pick one up. I'm probably not going to find one again for a while, so I made the move on that. Next card we got up is the Babe Ruth Oxford. I have this in a PSA 1, and this is one of my really big cards that I went in on. This is from 1921, a really early Babe Ruth. So the story about these is these cards were given with out in the Oxford confectionery. So they're given with candy, which is really cool. And a big theme other than tobacco in the early 1900s is that they were given out with these candy cards, or they're given out with either caramels or any other sort of candy that were given out to kids. So this one's very interesting. It is a PSA 1, but I'm super glad to have it. This is so far my only early Ruth in the collection, and it is a full-size card, non-hand cut, and I think there's around 30 of them graded at PSA and only a couple more at around SGC. So yeah, definitely a rare card, and I'm really glad to have it in my collection. Next one coming up, another one of my huge grails here, the Jackie Robinson 1947 Bond Bread portrait. This is in a PSA 2. I actually picked this up at the Dallas Card Show. The story of how I got it is pretty interesting because I kept going back and forth to the guy, and it was something where his price was fairly reasonable. I was trying to get it down to where I could go ahead and afford it. And it was literally, I think it was the last day of the Dallas Card Show. I went over to him. He was already packed up and just kind of messing around. I was like, hey, do you still have the card? He's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, can I check it out again? And he was like, sure. So I go ahead and I check it out. And I was expecting not to get it. I'm like, where are you from? This and that. Got his business card. And we ended up working on a deal. I was able to just sell a few things and get some things in the last seconds. He didn't want to do trade. So I was able to get this card. I know there's only around 90 of them at PSA. This is Jackie Robinson's first ever card in 1947. He does have a set with other Jackie Robinson cards, but this is the big one because it's the one that shows his portrait. It's a really cool card. I think it's a holy grail Jackie Robinson card, and I'm super glad to have this one in the collection and in a grade that's higher than a 1 because they're packaged with food, and with food a lot of staining can be involved.
Quick plug, guys, make sure to check out that Dallas Card Show vlog. The link is down below in the description. Now there's another show in March, but we are going to be going to the Philly Card Show because it's a ton of vintage and a little bit of variety. Since Dallas happens all the time, but we should be back in Dallas, I think May or July when they have the next shows. So we're going to take a look at one of those other ones as well. It's always a great show.
All right, and then next card we got coming up is a Cap Anson, and I do have two of these. The other one I'm going to be showing, but this one is this last day playing day card from 1895, the N300 Mayo's Cut Cap Anson. I do have this in authentic altered, but it does look like a really nice card here. This is one I actually found on PWCC, believe it or not. And I know they really started out as the pre-war card collectors. It was what they stand for, which a bunch of people don't realize. But it turns out that they do a lot of like modern stuff now, so I didn't even expect to find this card, and I found it. It is a fairly rare card as well, like Cap Anson's last playing day card. It's a really just cool looking card. It has this sepia tone to it when they like printed it out. Looks really nice. It's an interesting size because it's a little bit bigger than a tobacco card, but not as big as a normal sized. But it's a super cool card. I was really excited to add this one to my collection, and I think I found a really good deal on it, and they're just very rare. So anything that's rare like that, if it's around market price and like a rarer card, it also definitely could be worth it because there's just not that many of them. And it's definitely something to one, hold into the future, but two, also just to collect because you don't really see Cap Anson cards from just playing day that much these days.
And now to also talk about Mayo Cut Plug, they made other sets as well just besides baseball. So they made actually the first football set of collegiate football players, and that was, I believe, in 1894. And then in 1890, they made a set of boxers. Looks completely different, but these were some of the first sets after the American Tobacco Company was established. These weren't part of the American Tobacco Company, but the American Tobacco Company took over Allen and Ginter and also Old Judge, who produced the biggest sets of the day. So after those two companies merged, production of tobacco cards really stopped for quite a while. You had the Mayos in the 90s, but then it wouldn't really come back into full run of cards again until early 1900s with 1903. And in that set, you can also find, not Mayo cards, but in 1903, you can find some of the bigger names once again, like Cy Young and also Hannes Wagner's first tobacco card.
All right, the next one we got coming up, this is my only Old Judge card in the collection. This is a John Clarkson in a PSA 4. I think it looks really nice, and one that I do try to keep in kind of confined and not exposed to too much light because this is indeed a photograph, but it looks really nice for a 4. There's really not too many of these out here as well. Old Judge does have a lot of separate poses and everything, and this one isn't necessarily the rarest, but I do have it in one of the highest grades. I think there's one PSA 5, so there's only one copy graded higher, which is cool, and the picture on this one is super nice. This was actually a pickup from the National Card Show, which I was really excited to, and that we can't wait to go there next year's one in Atlantic City. That should be super fun. Sorry, next summer would be, correct?
Correct, next summer, and that's going to knock off New Jersey on the list for states to go to.
That's right. So yeah, this was just a really cool pickup. My only Old Judge in the collection so far. I'm definitely looking for more at the right price. It is really hard to with these type of cards, especially the Old Judge. Like I think this might be a pop 9 in the stance. But the just to find also like a certain market price for the card, and both people have to agree on it. There's a lot of, I guess, arbitrary dealing involved with these, but they're really, really cool if you can get your hands on them. They're extremely rare, and they're honestly one of baseball's basically like first cards and first sets. So very cool there.
Yeah, Old Judge, they don't look like this, but the first set was in 1886. There's obviously cabinet cards way before that, but it's really debatable between a lot of people if they consider them true baseball cards like the definition is today. So they had that first set in 1886, and those are so pricey. And they had that run from 1887 to 1890. Good enough. I also have a John Clarkson, which I picked up at the Dallas Card Show, but it's an authentic by SGC. Different pose as well.
Awesome. We're going on to my next one. This is the Cap Anson, Allen, and Ginter. I actually got this a while ago, and now it's on Ryan's list to eventually pick up, which I really hope he ends up getting one this year.
That or the Mayo. I want to get a Cap Anson. The problem is I'm saving up for a house so I can eventually build a full studio for YouTube. So I'm not spending too much money on cards right now, unfortunately. But when I have enough money, I'm going to go after a Cap Anson.
And this card as well also has a pretty interesting story. That's one thing I love about it too. When I pick up these cards, there's always a cool story involved with it. This one actually I found on a Facebook group. I specifically went to Ryan first because he was the one that like wanted the card first. I'm like, hey, is there something you can get right now? Do you want it? And he was like, no, I don't think it's just there right now. Like either like funds wise or trade wise, I'm just not there. I'm like, okay, cool. So I went out and I reached out to this guy, and he had like a fairly good price on it. He was actually, I think, a little bit below market. He also let me trade to it as well. So I think I really got to around market value at the time, but I was able to put partial trade towards it. which was awesome. And it was something that I saw too, because this card is SGC4, and a lot of these off the back, there's a lot of normally some adhesive in the back, whether glue or tape, just to stick into a binder. A lot of them are cut as well, but this one is full size and an SGC4, which is awesome. And I did some partial trade with some stuff. I think it was once I picked up a Lefty Grove, I believe it was a PSA 4.
The 33 Gaudy, yeah, that was such a nice card, man. I didn't want you to get rid of that one.
Yeah, I think it was that, and then I think I also had actually a Sanella Ruth as well, was in partial trade for this, but it's something, I had to give up those two awesome cards. This was something that I knew was like very rare and something that I would have as like almost one of the prized possessions of my PCs, and they don't really come up often. If they do, it's for a exuberant amount of money. So it's something where if someone wants to be partial trade for these cards, you got to work with them and you got to find a way to take it. So I ended up doing that around half cards, half cash, and now it's one of the gems of my PC and one of the two Cap Mansons I have, and I'm definitely looking to add more. And the last card in my personal collection, another basketball one. This is a 1968 Mira Tutosport of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, aka Lou Alcindor. So this card is also an interesting one. I found this on a Facebook group that someone just went ahead and put in. And by the way, for any like Facebook groups, I highly recommend you guys check them out, because it's a lot of, you know, consumer to consumer, collector to collector. You just never know what you're going to see on there. Sometimes some very rare things come up and you're able to actually know them, talk to them, negotiate with them, possibly trade. So it's really something I recommend if you're looking for building your PC. But back to this card, I saw it up and there weren't really too many comps on this one either. So I kind of had to go off like being arbitrary, and there is, I think on the back there was a little bit of a print mark, but it was from how I think these cards had another back. You actually had to peel off to get to this card, because it is an Italian card in the Mira Tutosport. There's also other legends, like there's a Wilt in the set, and I think there's also, I don't know if it's this year, but there's even a Muhammad Ali of this as well. I think it was Cassius Clay at the time. But this card itself is actually one of the ultra rare Lou Alcindor cards. It is from 1968. It predates the 69 Topps. It is a normal size card, has some really nice color to it, and it was something that I saw, and even at like what was kind of appropriate to be a market price, I really couldn't pass up. There's not too many of them out there. Also, they do have centering issues, and mine isn't terrible, a little bit off left to right, but definitely not bad at all, and something where there's only a pop 50 when you take into account this version and the Regalo version as well. So it's something I had to pick up, and I do collect a lot of XRCs, as the hobby calls it, or extended rookie cards of certain players, especially of vintage cards. So I'm really happy to have this Lou Alcindor card.
So if you guys enjoyed this episode of the personal collection, we'll probably do an update next year as well to see how the collection grows over time. Obviously see what Steven picks up in the different card show vlogs, but a lot of trading happens also on Facebook marketplaces. So maybe you'll double the size of your PC next year.
Yeah, that would be cool. I want to just list out some things that I would be looking for. I guess my sort of wish list for this year, I am looking for the 1955, I believe it's called All Sport, the Bill Russell card. And there's always been those I'm looking out for. I think it's around a PSA Pop 26. It is a hand-cut card of Bill Russell, and that's his first ever card, which most don't realize because they think it's the 57. However, in 1955, there was a group of all sports things where they kind of went out, and it's multi-sport. There's even a mandolin and a jockey in there, believe it or not. But there's just a bunch of panels, and one of them just happens to be a 1955 Bill Russell, which is insane because he wasn't even in the pros yet. It's just first ever card, just something really cool. So that's something that's on my wish list. Also, for basketball wish list, just to give that out, any of the 1969 high-end Hall of Famer of the Topps test cards, which are extremely rare basketball cards that were kind of produced but never really put out in packs. So definitely looking for both of those for basketball. And for baseball, I do have some stuff on my list, but some of them are a little bit out there in terms of price. So for the basketball, I'm going to be looking for those first, and then maybe the other baseball, if they come along or in trade, maybe it happens. But even stuff that like a shoeless Joe Jackson American Karma, I would love to get one of those. Just the price is very high, and you really gotta, one, build up the capital, and two, have at least something to trade with to really get you there. All
right, guys, next week I think I'm doing a episode on Cassius Clay, some of his cards in the 1960s. Super excited for that one, so make sure to stay tuned for it.